Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are back for another episode of the Buckeye Roast. It's your boy Ron James, apparently sitting here in the dark, here with my guy QP Ski. Q, how you doing?
I was wondering. I was like, what's your lighting? Oh, good, man. I'm good. How are
Is
you?
that better?
A little.
Slightly?
It just looked off. I was like, what the hell happened over there?
Yeah, I don't know. Trying to get the lighting going over here. But we got plenty to talk about here today. I wanted to ask you, Q, we're only a few hours removed from the national championship. And by a few, I mean like 4 days. But have you come down from your championship glow? Clearly, I've lost all of mine because there's no glow going on around here.
Lost all power. You used up all your points. Uh, no, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I feel like this is going to be a long off season of championship banner. So I haven't come down quite yet. I'm still enjoying it. Still talking to people about it. Saying, hey, who wants to talk about college football? It's a perfect time to go. So, still riding the high. But again, there's a lot of news. And checking around and see what people say. And some people are willing to give Ohio State credit, and some people want to talk, money and other things that led to a championship instead of us just straight up winning it undisputedly. So that's how my days have gone. I think Russell just over there.
Yeah, I'm still just trying to get ready over here, but I'm still I'm still basking in the glow of the national championship, but the headlines around the sport may have Buckeye fans a little bit concerned, so we got plenty to talk about today. The phrase of the day, Q, today is a roster retention. Before we get into it, there goes my lighting again.
I was just watching the wrestling special yesterday. I've never actually sat down, took the time to watch that. The season's been so long. The Vince McMahon one, it sounded like he just walked into your house over there. There will be no show, knocking everything down.
There will be no show. But the show goes on. The season continues. The Buckeyes win a national championship, but the sport does not stop for anybody. The players for the Buckeyes have until Saturday to enter the portal. Most notable, Carnell Tate's name has been floated with various teams. It's all started with a reporter asking Carnell a curious question after the national championship and asked him, is he thinking about the transfer portal? And they said he just smiled and said, I'm trying to celebrate with my team. Q, what have you been following in regards to this Carnell Tate situation?
I mean, I feel like everything has pretty much been the rumor mill, but my first question is, why is that the dude just wins a natty? And why is that the first question you ask him? I mean, even the night of, hey, you go into the transfer portal. First of all, why? I mean, Emeka was walking out the door. We get it. He just set the record for receptions. A bunch of names, in record books over there, Ohio State. But that opens up. So Carnell Tate looks to take over wide receiver too. But why are you asking that right after a national championship? It is a better question. The quality of journalism that goes on is a little crazy. But if you're asking my concern level of Carnell Tate leaving, I mean, I've heard things from he's looking to go. There'll be a surprise transfer. I always hate that. There'll be a surprise transfer. That could mean anything. But I think he sticks around. I mean, I'm not crazy worried about it. I would be very surprised because if you're looking at it, Jeremiah Smith next year is going to get all the attention. I mean, he's going to be in the headlines. Defense are going to bang on taking him out. So it leaves room for wide receivers to really eat in this offense next year. But that's my feeling on the Carnell Tate so far. I'm pretty confident he's back. How about you?
I don't know. It's hard to compete. I mean, there's a lot of things going in the direction. One of the teams that he's most connected with is Oregon, and we know how desperate they are after the whooping the Buckeyes just gave them. Carnell Tate's girlfriend also plays soccer at Oregon, and he's also good friends with Dante Moore. At one point, both of them were considering going to Notre Dame together. Dante Moore expected to be the starter at Oregon next year. For the Ducks. So that's one that's in contention. Penn State we know the struggles that they've had at wide receiver. We'll be talking about Penn State here a little bit later in the show, but another team that gives Carnell Tate an opportunity to start as the number one wide receiver, an opportunity to grab a bag, and it would allow him to be the guy that we all know he can be. He heard on the national championship broadcast, this is the guy that would be the number one wide receiver on almost 130 other teams in the country. Why would you stick around and sit behind JJ when you have the opportunity to get paid and be the guy? I don't know how much so he would be the guy at Oregon. I mean, a much more crowded room than Penn State, but Penn State also presents an opportunity. Could you see either one of those opportunities being more enticing than coming back to the Buckeyes?
I mean, yeah, that's the question I was going to ask you. Is there any opportunity out there that's better than kind of running it back with the guys you just spent, now you're on your third year with and just won a natty? I mean, Carnell Tate, we went through this with recruiting. Obviously, we had Tennessee out there, had a couple other schools, and it was, money thrown around, which shouldn't be a problem at Ohio State. But if he wanted to go in and develop and play for Brian Hartline and be in a room with other talented receivers, and you're looking at a time where, you kind of have your room set. You just spent a year starting. Yeah, you didn't get the ball thrown your way as much as the other guys, but it seemed to just clear up so you can basically walk into this room and be one of the top targets and one of the top options in this offense. I mean, running backs both go out the door. It's seeming light, so the running attack, again, may not be as balanced next year as you have kind of a younger crew trying to hold up that. I mean, again, we have Jeremiah Smith, but you can't throw it to Jeremiah Smith every play. I mean,
are we sure?
Yeah.
We haven't tried it yet. How do you know that doesn't work?
I don't think they're gonna do that every single play. It might work, yeah, it may be true, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people are gonna look at Texas and be like, well, that's kind of, we'll try to take that guy out and make them throw other places, and Carnell Tate was able to eat. So over a long season, I don't see the bandwagon. You just won a natty, you got more goals on the list, you're playing for the guy you want to play for. You're in a room with guys you grew up with playing ball with, Brandon Ennis, JJ, among others, the other SFE guys. So I don't feel like there's enough pull. I mean, you go to Oregon to what? The team you just kind of lost to, a team with other receivers on the board. You go to Penn State, why? You just saw a semifinal game where the wide receivers didn't get a ball. Like, do you know they can throw to the wide receiver? Or are they just going to bring in the tight end and feed him 50 balls and maybe throw it to you once? I mean, I don't think there's any place with any sort of pool unless you're just going to, I don't know, offer $10 million pull of Michigan to get this guy to leave. I don't see any really influence that would make me be like, oh, yeah, I'll go there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see the appeal. I mean, he could go be the number one wide receiver off the board next year if he wanted to, if he went to another school and got those opportunities. We've talked endlessly on this platform about how important slot position is at Ohio State. Most people not familiar with our offense assume, oh, well, Carnell Tate, he's going to step right in and be number 2 in targets and receptions next year. And that's not guaranteed. I mean, you could see a situation where you have Chris Garrett and Jackson all flirting with 1,000 yards, or you can see what you saw this year with 2 guys, which is more likely to happen, 2 guys with 1,000 yards and another guy floating around 500-600 yards. And most people would assume Carnell Tate would just see that jump, but it's more likely that Brandon Ennis just steps into the Emeka Egbuka role and sees similar targets in the slot that we saw Emeka have. So I'm not sure that it's guaranteed that Carnell Tate would just jump in production with the absence of Emeka Egbuka. So the appeal to go be the number 1 wide receiver somewhere, I couldn't blame him given that he's come here and already accomplished the number 1 goal. We've talked about it on this platform. When Brian Hartline signed that 2023 class, I said, I guarantee these guys win us a national championship here. It's that talented of a group, and they've already made good on that statement in year 2 here. So if Carnell were to depart, I wouldn't be able to blame him, but I do still feel like the Buckeyes find a way to get it done, especially right after a national championship. I feel like the Buckeyes should be able to match most people's offers. I saw someone mention in the chat that a lot of the young guys are asking for raises, and it's like, that's cool, but make sure these guys that are actually playing are retained first.
Yeah. So question here. Mekabuka walks out the door. We see that. We've heard all the Brandon Ennis hype. Obviously, he didn't do a lot this season. Obviously, Mecca held that spot down, and maybe the top 3 guys were just a little bit ahead. I mean, we've seen Brandon Ennis with a nice clean route in an national championship, so maybe that's fresh in people's minds. But do you think it's more realistic, I guess, as they say, Carnell Tate? He was ready to play. I mean, we've gone back a couple years now where he was the best freshman receiver they've ever seen before JJ walks in the door next room. Do you think it's more realistic they say, hey, Carnell Tate's been ready to play? Obviously, we had Emeka Egbuka here, but Carnell Tate's a guy we can also go and move around and get in positions where if we want our second best guy to get the ball, maybe we put him in better positions to get the ball versus bringing in another guy to take to that volume of snaps and reps just because he plays the slot position and it's a little more comfortable. So you think it's more obvious that they pull him inside and maybe start the rotated receivers on Carnell Tate's old position to give him the ball more, or they say, hey, Brandon Anders, you play the slot. We love the slot, so it doesn't matter who's out there. We're going to trust you now as wide receiver 2.
I mean, what they do and what they say are probably 2 different things. I would imagine the conversation to keep them here goes something like the way you presented it and like, hey, we're going to find ways to get you the ball more. What they actually do, that remains to be seen. I mean, when you talk about this team next year, you know my offseason saying if we don't have a quarterback returning from the prior year, I've never seen my quarterback throw a pass. I can't give you a prediction. So, I mean, you would imagine with the amount of loss on the defensive side of the ball that the Buckeyes are going to need a more aggressive offense, a more high-flying offense that puts up points, because the idea that you're going to be able to expect a top 5 defense when you're only returning 2 guaranteed starters, I think that's lofty expectations for a defense that's losing a ton. So you would look to the other side of the ball and say, well, if they're not going to be able to stop people in the same way, we're going to have to score more points. Does that open up the offense to involve more wide receivers? Are you going to see them milking the clock less and getting out of games early as far as having them in hand and playing rotational guys and getting the running backs more involved? Or do you see an opportunity where, Dwayne Haskins has to break the Big Ten touchdown passing record in a single season because the defense can't stop anybody? I wouldn't say that it's going to be that egregious next year, but I do think this offense is going to need to score more points, and that could be a part of the pitch to Carnell Tate of, hey, we're going to have to sling this thing a little bit more next year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think his team is shifting, even though we kind of got this makeshift offensive line. They're playing really well. I mean, you look at the back, you're like, well, Trey and Q ain't back there no more. So we're trusting new guys in this room. But there's one thing we know if we can get the ball in the hands of Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and possibly Brandon Ennis as he emerges, like it worked to last year. So I'm a little more on the lean side of that, and that builds well for Carnell Tate. Again, he's got all the talent. I think if he is that good, if he is as good as everyone says he is and everybody believes he is, even in the room and in the fan base, I believe Ohio State's going to look at it like, all right, he's top 3, top 4 weapon on offense, total outside of the offensive line. We need to get this guy the ball. So that's the way I'm looking at it versus it's better to leave.
Before we talk about any other potential departures from the Buckeyes, I wanted to set the stage and talk about the transfer portal movement that we've already seen for this roster. A quick recap. We saw Air Nolan leave for South Carolina, and Devin Brown has departed for Cal. Sam William Dixon has entered the portal but has not chosen a destination yet. Kojo Antwi is headed to Colorado. Jaden Ballard headed to Wisconsin. George Fitzpatrick, I believe, just signed with Kansas State yesterday. This graphic was not updated when I grabbed it, but I do believe that's where he ended up landing. Zenhowski ended up at Indiana. Miles Walker, former offensive tackle, ends at Boise State. Former tight end Patrick Gurd does not have a destination yet. Mitchell Melton signed at Virginia this week. Kansas State picked up Gabe Powers early in the portal cycle. Calvin Simpson-Hunt recently entered the transfer portal and announced 2 days ago that he will be heading to Baylor. And Jaden Bonsu is headed to the 4-1-2 with your boy Ron James and is heading to the University of Pittsburgh. As far as additions to the Buckeyes roster, they pick up running back C.J. Donaldson from West Virginia, Phillip Daniels, offensive tackle from Minnesota, Ethan Onua, offensive tackle from Rice, Max Clare, the number 1 tight end in the country and available in the portal out of Purdue, and then D-end Logan George out of Idaho State. We'll first start with the departures. Q, do you see any major losses on this list of departures?
I mean,
and let me rephrase that. I don't want to say not major losses. Do you see any departures that impact your expectations for the depth chart next season?
Yeah, it doesn't really feel so. I mean, maybe Mitchell Melton. I mean, obviously we've seen the guys at defensive end really handle and play at a high level. I mean, he's one of the more guys with experience, but you look at Kenyatta Jackson, you look at Caden Curry. I mean, you bring those guys back, and you're like, all right, it's your time now, full season to be the starters and get all the reps that people talked about them not getting last year. So maybe he's a guy for experience. I mean, outside of that, it's guys that really have been unproven here. I mean, outside of Patrick Gerd, we know what he does. I mean, most of the guys on this list were coming in and battling for positions. I mean, you look at all positions here that are leaving, you're like, oh, there's another guy there that, we're ready to see or we think that can emerge. So Gabe Powers be the other one. I mean, obviously I sold my Gabe Powers stock, but with Cody Simon walking out the door, I mean, that's another guy to battle for some level of position there that I would look at. But for the most part, I mean, pretty unscathed as far as like, ooh, I don't know if we can lose that guy for next year. It's we got other people that can battle, and obviously those guys are reaching points where it's like I need to play, or my career is going to be kind of set on the bench here. So yeah, I understand it, but there's nothing here that I would be too freaked out about.
Yeah, I mean, I am a big Gabe Powers guy and held on to my Gabe Powers stock, and I'm still holding it even with him at Kansas State.
Pay off.
It's going to pay off eventually. That's a guy that I believe in. I think that's a nice little thank you gift to Kansas State after they sent us Will Howard. So to give them Gabe Powers, I think that's someone that's going to be able to contribute to them. And I think that is a guy that could have played here at Ohio State. I think a couple of those guys were capable if they would have stuck it out. But Gabe Powers, to me, when I look at that list, is the biggest departure. And then Jaden Bonsu being right down the street, that's going to be fun to be able to watch him at Pitt. My family has season tickets, so I will probably pop into a game or two and check out how Jaden Bonsu is playing for the Pitt Panthers. It's not just players, Q, that they're associating with other teams as potential departures from this Buckeye. I don't even want to say roster because we're talking about the coaching staff. Jim Knowles has been linked to everybody in the country as a potential DC. I feel like every time I open the timeline, I see Jim Knowles' name associated as the next DC at insert school's name here. And I imagine Ryan Day is having conversations like this with Jim Knowles in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center right now.
You was here last night, too, wasn't you?
Yes, sir. I was.
You was here, and you was smooching with my brother.
I'm afraid you're mistaken, sir.
Don't give me that. You've been smooching with everybody. Snuffy, Al, Leo, Little Mo with the gimpy leg, Cheeks, Bony Bob, Cliff.
No. It's a lie.
I could go on forever, baby.
I could go on forever, baby. It feels like Jim Knowles is interviewing for every open defensive coordinator job in the country. First, you hear reports come out that he is interested in the Oklahoma job, returning back to where he was. He was formerly at Oklahoma State, but heading back to the state of Oklahoma. A lot of rumors around a potential girlfriend with family down there that doesn't want to move to Columbus. I've read reports that there are high school age kids that they don't want to relocate. So that one was in play. Another one that we're hearing is Penn State. They feel like they're all in as far as their championship pursuit. They just lost their defensive coordinator in Tom Allen. Jim Knowles, a Philly guy. It feels like the Pola family are the two things that are enticing Jim Knowles to potentially leave the Buckeyes. Lots of money being thrown around for the third-year national championship defensive coordinator for the Buckeyes. Q, I text you the show notes last night, and the response I got from you was, what the fuck's going on with Jim Knowles? Since you're a little new to this story, how surprised were you when you had to start digging into what was going on with Jim Knowles in, it seems, every open coordinator position in the country right now?
I mean, I quickly after the Natty, I heard about Jim Knowles to possibly Oklahoma. I mean, maybe a little before, and I'm like, why? Like, I don't get it. I think here, and follow me down the theory path. You remember the talk after, or I guess before Ryan Day played Michigan, about how if he possibly lost, he could get fired, and his agent was out there putting out fillers and saying, okay, like, you know, if this doesn't go well and he loses his job, you know, we need other options to see, you know, where he's gonna go. So you started to hear about Ryan Day to the NFL, and that creeped over to after the Natty. Do you think it's the same thing with Jim Knowles of, hey, if we don't win a Natty and we go out and get blasted against Tennessee, I might need a new job. So let me look at Oklahoma. Let me look at Penn State. Let me look at Duke. Let me look at Miami. Let me look at all the options and see if I can possibly have a job here to walk into before my head coach gets fired. So that's my first question to you in the chat. Do you think that's what's going on here? Because that would be something that would make sense.
No, I mean, I feel like it's one of two things. I feel like it's either the Pola family or there's someone that he doesn't get along with in that building, because, I mean, all reports seem to indicate the Buckeyes are prepared to match any offer from other schools when it comes to money. I want to present to you another theory of someone that may be contributing to why Jim Knowles wants to leave. Someone asked me, hey, Jim's the head coach of the defense. I'm like, no, it's not. The only person that Larry Johnson answers to at Ohio State is Gene Smith, and he doesn't work there anymore. So he's the captain now.
Yeah, bro. Larry Johnson's little finger, dog.
So I was wrong to distrust you.
Distrusting me was the wisest thing you've done since you climbed off your horse.
We've been covering this relationship and dynamic between Larry Johnson and Jim Knowles for years now, and we've always talked about no one tells Larry what to do. It seems like every time Larry gets into a battle with someone on this staff, Larry wins. Larry has 1 year left on his contract, and it's being speculated that their working relationship may have something to do with the decision. Q, where do you lean if you had to guess what is playing the biggest factor in Jim Knowles' decision, whether it be family, expectations, money, Larry Johnson? If you had to pick one that is contributing to this potential move, which one are you going with?
I mean, if I had to pick one of those, I mean, we've heard all the Larry Johnson stuff. I think I would put family first, and maybe this is why. It really felt like towards the end of last season. Well, I guess last season probably in general, but towards especially the end of last season, felt like they figured it out. I mean, it felt like they finally had that blend of defenses where we start the roll here, and Jim Knowles can kind of both play with 4 down fronts, 3 down fronts, kind of get complicated and do really what Jim Knowles does. I mean, that, you know, playing with the defensive backs, taking a defensive lineman off the field, moving around linebackers, playing with more sets. It feels like Jim Knowles, the mad scientist, was really in his bag at the end of last season. So it kind of felt like maybe they reached a point where it's like, all right, Larry, when I need you and your guys to get pressure and play 4 down front, we'll do that. When I need to change it up and I got to deal with guys like Dylan Gabriel and these mobile quarterbacks, you know, I may go 3-man front, have a spy, and do some different things. So it kind of felt like they found it. Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe they hate each other so much it started to work. Like, I don't know. And both sides were right, and they still haven't figured it out. But I mean, it does feel like Larry, with one more year left to run. I think we feel like Larry has had more time here than he has left. So Jim Knowles may get another shot.
You trying to kill off our defensive line coach?
I'm talking about coaching, not in life.
Bro, put an expiration sticker on our defensive line coach.
I hope Larry is here in 20 years, like Jim Tressel is with his jacket on coming to games. But I just feel like the staff is aligned. Jim Knowles has been given a lot of room here. I mean, he's got a safety coach in. We talked about Perry Eliano not doing a bad job, and he was like, "Nah, I'm good. I need my guy in here." So it feels like he's got enough leeway to where on the staff, I think he'll be, happy and satisfied. And the way Larry's guys played at the end of last season was really well to kind of be like, okay, I can work with this guy. So it has to be something like maybe family-ish, but it's also like, dude, you're in Columbus. You're making millions of dollars a year. You're probably about to get a pay bump. Like, what girl you got that you can't convince? Hey, I'm making like $5 million up here. You might want to come up here. And the thing too is, if I could see if it was like Miami or like San Diego, or you give me Norman, Oklahoma, like that's where you want to go. Like, I'm like, look, I don't care how long your kid's been in school. Bring their ass up here, because I guarantee you it's more fun here than it's going to be in the middle of Oklahoma. I've never been to Norman, but I'm going to have some bias here. I have to believe it's more fun than Columbus.
I mean, Jim Knowles, a big sushi guy. Maybe he's going there for the sushi. Oklahoma, landlocked Oklahoma, known for their exotic fish. You brought up MG being here. I see a lot of people on the timeline talking about this Jim Knowles situation, but a lot of people aren't talking about the fact that if Jim Knowles departs, we will also be looking for a safety coach. I don't see Matt Guerrieri surviving. Even if he does stay on staff this year, it will be his last year on staff. I would imagine Jim Knowles takes him with him wherever he goes. So something to keep an eye on in regards to this coaching situation. If Jim Knowles were to depart, it looks like the Buckeyes could be hiring at minimum 2 coaches on the defensive side of the ball. I wanted to ask you, where do you think the Buckeyes turn for a replacement for Jim Knowles if he were to depart? Do you think you could see someone like Tim Walton, a former NFL defensive coordinator, be promoted to DC? I don't know how that would play with the fan base optically, given how the Kerry Combs situation went, promoting a corners coach to defensive coordinator. But the difference being Kerry Combs never had experience as a defensive coordinator. OG Walt has not only done it, but he's done it at the highest level in the NFL. Another option would be to poach someone's defensive coordinator or go out and grab someone from the NFL. Q, how do you think the Buckeyes would go about filling this vacancy?
I have a lot of faith in Tim Walton doing what he does. I don't know if that's exactly will be defensive coordinator at Ohio State, but I know he does have some experience, so he'll always have his fingerprints on the back end. But I feel like you have to go out and get somebody who is going to kind of carry around that torch that Jim Knowles and Jeff Hafley before him was able to do. And you see the possibilities. If you can deliver one of the top defenses in the nation, you have a chance to win a natty. Yeah, we haven't won a natty every year, but Jim Knowles, year after year after year, has put us in position to where we felt like the offense could sort of get it together. We have a chance at a ring here. So I feel like you got to get somebody guaranteed if you do. I mean, Ryan Day will always be an NFL guy because his associations there, and he's pulled guys from there. So I feel like that is someplace he would probably look first. If it's not, coordinators around college football. If your coordinator is delivering a top defense, especially getting the most out of his talent at a lesser place, I would say that guy is up for a pay bump, and Ohio State will pay the ticket because it is that important. So that's where I would look. I don't think the answer would be on staff. I think it would be outside of staff.
We have a super chat here from our guy, Ben. Save money, promote Matt G right now. Push Knowles out. He don't want to be a Buckeye. We don't want him. Yeah, but I don't think Matt G wants to be here either. I think he's only here because he got fired at Indiana and Jim Knowles is his man's. But we're not going to dive into that too much. But I think those two are almost attached at the hip. I think it's a package deal. And especially if this doesn't go south, I'm not sure Ryan Day wants any remnants from the Jim Knowles era if this does sour and Jim Knowles departs. So, I mean, maybe he would be able to keep things going. I believe he was the defensive coordinator at Indiana prior to the Kurt Cignetti era. So maybe that's a direction they look, but I'm sure he would have had to have impressed the staff mightily in his short time here to be considered for that role. Bit of shout out to you, Ben. Thanks for the 5. Shout out to Posh for being a member. We are the champions, my friends. Go Bucks champs. Posh was looking ahead in the notes, and I wanted to bring up her last message before we got out of here to talk about before we get out of here. It's going to be, 72 hours since the national championship? I'm bad on math. We might even be further than that. It's been a couple days. I've tried like 3 times now to calculate how long it's been since the national championship. I wanted to ask you, Q, do all of these looming questions about departures take away from the Natty glow? Posh says right here, I'm ignoring all the departures and enjoying this Natty. And that's kind of the mindset that I'm in, that like, I hear people talking about next year already. You see the talks about the quarterback battle. I'm like, we've been the lunatic fringe for 4-5 years now throughout the Ryan Day era, ever since we started losing to Michigan, bitching about everything about this team, because all in hopes of a national championship. There's no way within the first week of winning a Natty, I'm already diving in to next season. What do we do all this stress for? What do we watch all these games for? It's all to win a Natty. Everything we're talking about is through the scope of, can the Buckeyes still win a Natty if any of these things happen? We're here. The moment that everybody's looking for. If Carnell Tate stays, why do people want Carnell Tate to stay? Because they think he can win us a Natty. Why do they want Jim Knowles to stay? Because they think he can win us a Natty. We just won a Natty. This is the moment everyone's constantly chasing. Why are people not enjoying this and taking this moment in? Like, we have all off season, all next season. Fuck, look at history. We got another decade before we get another one of these things. Why are people concerned about next season, next year, Jim Knowles, Carnell Tate? We have what we've been pursuing. Everybody's been longing for. It is here. This is the moment. What's the rush?
See, Ronnie, you're confused. It was never about winning a Natty. It was about going back to back. That's what it was all about. That was number one goal. We're only halfway there. No, I'm with you, man. You truly have to enjoy this ride. And I think we talked about it a bit right after the Natty. Was like, man, it's been 10 years since we held up that trophy. I mean, you think of how many times we've come close, how many times you felt like we had the team do it, how many times you felt like we had the staff to do it. It wasn't done until this season. So obviously you have to really enjoy this one and kind of put it in. I see a lot of people, and I've been all over social media, a lot of people trying to damper this championship, talk about, oh, I've seen $20 million rosters so many times. I've seen Michigan fans try to leech on to every single Ohio State post that's positive that goes up. But man, ain't nobody worried about all that. We got the ring. We're about to talk crazy all off season. We're about to talk crazy all next season until somebody else holds up that trophy besides us, and then we can be back to the drawing board. But as fans here, I mean, you really have to enjoy this. Like you say, you don't know. I mean, a 12-team playoff, it's increasingly difficult to win in that. I mean, that run we just went on, like, I don't know who in this fan base had the confidence that was coming. But I don't believe we had that on this show of like, once the Tennessee game happened, we're like, oh, okay, this team's going to really have a tough one against Oregon. Okay, I guess Texas may be to stop us. Okay, no one can stop us. So, I mean, you got to enjoy that run. I'm with you. I'm hoping Jim Knowles and that stuff gets settled. But for real, you feel good about this team. Like, I don't feel like, oh, we're ready for a mass departure or this is all going to fall apart. I mean, I feel good about it, but everyone can leave. I'm talking crazy. It doesn't matter. Right? They can be out the door. I'm talking crazy until someone else holds up that trophy.
Q's like, I don't give a fuck if they hire Lou Holtz as DC. We're going to be just fine. I'm going to be sleeping in my national championship t-shirt for the next decade.
Yeah, I feel it. 12-team playoff. We did that already. Throw something new. when they change the playoff, my good feeling will go away.
Exactly. Once they switch up this playoff format again, and we know the Buckeyes are guaranteed a new national championship, we'll lock back in. But until now, until then, we're enjoying this national championship. There are 650 people watching right now. We appreciate everybody that tuned in. If you're watching on YouTube and you're new around here, make sure you subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button. If you're on Twitter, make sure you retweet it. Make sure you drop us a follow. Make sure you're a member in the Ohio State community. If you haven't checked it out already, we have a national championship recap video up on the channel. If you want to check that out, be sure to do so after the show. If you didn't see it on Twitter, it is also on our YouTube channel. But for now, we're going to get out of here. Both got to get to work here. But man, Q, I'm still glowing from a national championship despite all of this unsettling news in regards to the roster. It's going to be a long, again, just throwing out hours, 48 hours, I think we got or so left before guys have to make their decision in regards to the portal. This Jim Knowles stuff could drag out a little bit longer, but as far as portal departures, we should have an answer here by Sunday. We will be talking to you guys again on Monday. Q, let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody tuning in, man. We're trying to keep the content consistent. You find me at City Boy Quentin on Twitter. Find us
consistently late.
Find us on Instagram. Miley Films here on YouTube. Definitely trying to. It's the off season, so we will, try to change up the content a little bit. If there's something you want to hear us talk about, is there any other, sporting events or things you want us to dive into? Please let us know. Ron, we're down for whatever, man. We're down to switch it up. So definitely do that. Like Ron said, like the video, all that good stuff. Make sure you do that. And I want to give a shout out to Robert Howard. He was the first one in the chat this morning. I know we got started a little late, but we're not trying to forget the business we got to take care of. So shout out to him, shout out to Posh, shout out to everyone in here. And again, I will get this member content going now. I got a little more time now. We're not every day in the we're in the off season. So try to get this member content going. Stay on me, and I will get it out for you. Ron, get us out.
Yeah, big shout out to everybody in the chat, everybody that tuned in today. Shout out to our guy, Charles Green. We know he's out there recovering from a knee injury, so prayers up to our guy. But if you guys want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at 2Ts. It's 2_TES. You can catch us here weekdays for the Buckeye Roast at 8 a.m. Going to try to bring you a lot more off-season content this year versus last year where we took a little bit of a hiatus. Keep an eye out for recap videos, hype videos, anything from the Best Damn Media platform. We appreciate everybody tuning in around here, and you guys know how this thing ends. It's always go Bucks, and of course, OH.
IO.
Yeah.